Someone told you it was too late. Maybe it was a voice inside you, quiet and persistent, speaking in the language of calendar years and missed opportunities. Maybe it was a number on a birthday card that landed differently than you expected. Maybe it was just the slow accumulation of mornings, where the person you had hoped to wake up next to was not there, and somewhere along the way, without quite deciding to, you started to believe it. You started to believe that the season for love, for real, bone deep, chosen by someone love, had passed, that the window had closed, that the appointed time had come and gone, and what remained was making peace with what did not happen. I want you to hear something before we go any further. Not a platitude, not a comforting phrase designed to make you feel better for 5 minutes. Something that is going to require you to stay until the end of this message, because what I'm about to show you about C.S. Lewis, about Scripture, and about what God is actually doing in your life right now, will permanently change how you read every year that has passed and every year that is still ahead of you. That voice lied to you, and I am going to prove it. C.S. Lewis was 58 years old when he married Joy Davidman. 58, at an age when most people have made peace with their life, as it is when the chapters feel mostly written and the remaining pages feel like denouement. Lewis fell into the most complete, most transforming, most tenderly human love of his life. The man who had written brilliantly about love for decades, who had mapped the architecture of affection and friendship and eros and agape with the precision of a philosopher, had never fully lived it, until Joy, until the woman who arrived when every reasonable human calculation said it was too late. And what I am about to show you is that what happened to Lewis was not a coincidence. It was not an exception. It was a pattern, the same pattern woven through Scripture from Genesis to Luke. And it is the pattern that may be operating in your life right now, even as you are reading. Do not go anywhere. What I am going to tell you in part 6 of this message about who God actually sent may be the most important thing you have ever heard about love and time. Here is what we are going to discover in this message. We are going to see why the idea that love has a deadline is a cultural lie, not a biblical truth. We are going to enter the story of C. Lewis and Joy Davidman and understand what their love reveals about the timing of God. We are going to look at what Lewis called the 4 loves and understand why the deepest love has no expiration date, because its source is eternal. We are going to walk through the biblical pattern of loves and destinies that arrived when human logic said they absolutely could not. Abraham and Sarah, Ruth and Boaz, Zechariah and Elizabeth. And we are going to understand what God is doing in your loneliness right now, because it is not what you think it is, and it is not what the enemy told you it was. And by the time we finish, you will understand why someone is coming who will love you in a way that has no age limit, because God sent them. And God does not run late. Part 1. The lie about age and love. The idea that love has a deadline is not in the Bible. Let me say that again. The idea that love has a deadline, that there is an age past which God stops sending, stops preparing, stops moving on behalf of the desire for human love and companionship, is not in the Bible, not once, not implied, not encoded. It is a cultural construction. It is the logic of a world that runs on efficiency and optimization and the terror of diminishing returns. But it is not the logic of the God who made you. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 11. One of the most quietly powerful verses in all of Scripture. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Everything. Not some things. Not the things that arrived on the culturally approved schedule. Everything beautiful in its time. The Hebrew word translated beautiful here is Yafeh, and it carries not just aesthetic beauty, but wholeness, completeness, rightness. The word time is the appointed, right, specific time. God does not make things beautiful on your timeline. He makes them beautiful on the timeline that produces the truest, most complete, most specifically right version of what He designed. And His appointed time is never early and never late, even when it looks from inside human chronos time like both. Here is what the lie about age and love actually is. It is the assumption that God's timing follows human biology and cultural convention. It assumes that because the world has decided something should happen by a certain age, God agrees with that decision. It assumes that divine love and divine provision operate within the same constraints that Netflix algorithms and dating app demographics do. But the God who created time does not live inside it. He is not subject to the pressure of the biological clock or the social calendar or the raised eyebrow of the person who asks at family gatherings why you are still alone. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31. But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Waiting on the Lord is not passive resignation to what did not happen. Waiting on the Lord, the Hebrew kavah, to twist together, to be intertwined, is active participation in a strength that is not yours. It is the posture of a person who knows that what is coming is worth waiting for, because it was designed before you were born. And the one who designed it has not forgotten the design. Part 2. C.S. Lewis at 58, the greatest love of his life. Clive Staples Lewis was born in Belfast in 1898. He was, by every external measure, a man who had organized his life around the life of the mind. Oxford Don, Cambridge professor, author of more than 30 books. One of the most influential Christian apologists of the 20th century. Brilliant friends, rich intellectual life, and profoundly alone in the way that matters most. He had lived with his close friend Mrs. Moore for decades, a relationship of deep loyalty and care. He had his beloved brother Warney. He had the Inklings Tolkien and Williams and the company of extraordinary minds. But the kind of love that Lewis had mapped in the Four Loves, the eros that he described as the form of love that says not, I want this, but I want you that. Love had never arrived until Joy Davidman, an American poet and novelist, a woman of fierce intellect, sharp humor, and a faith that had been forged in the same fire as Lewis's own. She wrote him a letter. He wrote back. And something began that neither of them, given their ages, given the impossibility of it from every conventional angle, could have predicted. They married in 1956. Lewis was 58. Joy was 45. By the time they married, Joy had been diagnosed with cancer. The human calculus of this love story is, by any conventional measure, a study in everything that should have argued against it. Wrong time, wrong age, wrong health prognosis, wrong everything, by the logic of a world that optimizes for safety and longevity and conventional happiness. And yet, Lewis wrote, in the years after Joy's death, in that raw and devastating and ultimately luminous record called A Grief Observed, her absence is like the sky spread over everything. Only a man who had truly loved writes like that. Only a love that was complete writes like that. The grief of A Grief Observed is the testimony of a love that arrived late by human standards and was, by any spiritual measure, exactly on time. What did those years with Joy give Lewis that 4 decades of intellectual brilliance had not? Completion, the kind of being known and being chosen that transforms a person at the level no achievement can reach. He said in his letters that joy had opened doors in me that he had not known were there. He was 58. The doors opened at 58. Do not tell me God does not know how to send love in the second half of a life. In the Four Loves, Lewis describes something he called the vulnerability of eroses, the terrifying and beautiful openness that love requires. He said that to love at all is to be vulnerable, that the only place outside heaven where you can be perfectly safe from all the dangers of love is hell. He knew this not just as a philosopher, he knew it as a man who had finally, at 58, been willing to be that vulnerable. And the love that arrived on the other side of that vulnerability was, by his own testimony, worth every year of waiting that preceded it. Here is what I want you to hear from the life of C.S. Lewis. God did not give him Joy Davidman despite his age. God gave him Joy Davidman because of the man that 6 decades of life, loss, faith, and formation had produced. The love that arrived at 58 could only have been received by the Lewis who existed at 58. Not the Lewis of 28 or 38, the Lewis that time and grace had built. Your age is not a limitation on what God can send. Your age is part of the design of what He is sending it to. Part 3. The Four Loves: What God Designed Love to Be. Lewis identified 4 distinct forms of love in his landmark work. The Four Loves, storge, the affection of familiarity; philia, the love of friendship; eros, the romantic love; and agape, the divine love that underlies and enables all the others. And he made an observation that I want you to receive very specifically. Agape, the love that comes from God. That is, God has no origin in human biology. It has no peak and no decline. It is not subject to the pressures of time and age and opportunity. 1 John chapter 4, verse 19. We love because He first loved us. The capacity for love that you carry, the hunger in you for real, true, chosen companionship, does not have a biological origin. It has a divine origin. It was placed in you by a God who is Himself love, who designed you in the image of a being, for whom love is not an emotion but an identity. And if the capacity for love comes from a divine source, then the fulfillment of that love is also under divine jurisdiction, not human demographic jurisdiction, not cultural timeline jurisdiction, not the jurisdiction of anyone's raised eyebrow or well-meaning concern. Divine jurisdiction. Song of Solomon chapter 8, verses 6 and 7. Place me like a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm. For love is as strong as death, its jealousy unyielding as the grave. It burns like blazing fire, like a mighty flame. Many waters cannot quench love. Rivers cannot sweep it away. This is not the language of something that has an expiration date. This is not the language of a love that runs out of time. Many waters cannot quench it. Rivers cannot sweep it away. The love that God designed, the love that He plants as a divine capacity in every human soul, is not subject to the erosion of years. It is not quenched by loneliness. It is not swept away by the accumulation of disappointments. It burns. It is unyielding. It is as strong as death itself, and we know from the resurrection that even death has been defeated. What does this mean for you, specifically today? It means that the love you are hungry for, the love that has not yet arrived in the form you hope for, is not evidence that God forgot you. It is evidence that the source of that hunger is eternal, and eternal sources produce on eternal timelines. Lewis wrote about what he called the need love and the gift love, the love that reaches out from emptiness and the love that pours out from fullness. He said that the highest form of love is the gift love, the love that does not need a return, that gives, because giving is its nature. And he located the origin of gift love in God. Here is what this means. The God who loves you is not loving you because he needs something from you. He is loving you because love is what he is. And the love he has designed for your life, the human love, the companionship, the being known and being chosen, flows from that same source. It is not running dry. It is not diminishing with your years. It is waiting for its appointed moment to arrive in the fullness that God designed. The Four Loves is a book written by a man who, at the time of writing, had not yet experienced the fullest form of the love he was describing. He published it in 1960. He married Joy in 1956. He wrote about love in theory, and then God let him live it. Sometimes God teaches you the theology before he gives you the testimony. Your understanding of love is not ahead of the gift. It is preparation for it. There is something else Lewis said in the Four Loves that I do not want you to miss, because it speaks directly to what many of you have done with your longing in the years that the love you hoped for did not arrive. Lewis wrote, "The human mind has no more power of inventing a new value than of imagining a new primary color, or indeed of creating a new sun and a new sky for it to move in." What he meant was this: you cannot manufacture a desire from nothing. You cannot want something that has no correspondence in reality. The very fact that you have longed deeply, specifically, persistently for the kind of love that has not yet arrived is not evidence that the desire is delusional. It is evidence that the desire corresponds to something real, something that exists, something that was designed. The hunger proves the food exists, the thirst proves the water is real, and the longing for love that you have carried through the years when it did not come, through the seasons when you wondered if it was foolish to still want it, that longing is not a malfunction. It is a divine signal. It is the heart's way of saying, what I was made for is not yet fully received. And a God who designed that longing has not forgotten its answer. Your desire is not naive. It is prophetic. It is pointing forward, not backward, to what God has already designed and has not yet delivered. Part 4. Biblical late bloomers, the pattern of appointed time. If you think the story of C.S. Lewis and Joy is an anomaly, a beautiful exception to a general rule, I need to show you that it is not an exception. It is a pattern. The pattern by which God works when he is doing something that requires a specific readiness that only time can produce. Abraham and Sarah. Genesis chapter 21, verses 1 and 2. Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised him. At the very time God had promised, not at the very time Abraham and Sarah expected, not at the very time that was biologically convenient, not at the very time that avoided the embarrassment and the grief and the years of waiting that preceded it. At the very time God had promised. Sarah was 90 years old when Isaac was born. 90. The medical impossibility of that birth is the point, because God was making absolutely certain that no human could take credit for what he was releasing. The appointment was so specific, so perfectly timed, so completely beyond the natural, that when it arrived, only one explanation was possible. Ruth and Boaz. Ruth was a widow, a foreigner, a woman with every social and biological reason to conclude that her season for love had passed with the death of her first husband. She followed her mother-in-law Naomi back to a foreign land, not because it offered her opportunity, but because loyalty was more important to her than prospects. She gleaned in the fields, she worked with her hands. She did not strategize for love or optimize for outcome. She was faithful in the ordinary. And Boaz noticed her. Ruth chapter 2 verse 12. Boaz says to Ruth, "May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." And then Ruth chapter 3 verse 10. Boaz says, "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor." Do you hear what Boaz is saying? He is saying, your faithfulness, your refusal to chase what was convenient has prepared you for what is right. Ruth was not rewarded for efficiency. She was rewarded for faithfulness in the ordinary, and the love that came to her Boaz, the kinsman redeemer, the one who covered her, arrived at the appointed time, in the appointed place, with the appointed person, Zechariah and Elizabeth. Luke chapter 1, verses 36 and 37. The angel Gabriel, speaking to Mary, says, "Even Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child in her old age, and she who was said to be unable to conceive is in her 6th month. For no word from God will ever fail." No word from God will ever fail. Elizabeth had carried the reproach of barrenness for decades. In the culture of her time, barrenness was interpreted as divine disfavor, as evidence that God had not blessed her. She had lived with that reproach. She had prayed and waited and grown old in the waiting. And then in her old age, Gabriel announces to Mary that Elizabeth is 6 months pregnant. The child Elizabeth was carrying was John the Baptist, the one who would prepare the way for Jesus himself. Her most important child in the most important moment in human history was carried by a woman who was told by every biological and cultural measure that her time had passed. God did not give Elizabeth a child despite her age. God waited until Elizabeth was the specific woman shaped by decades of waiting and faithfulness and trust who could mother the forerunner of the Messiah. The delay was the design. The appointed time was always the appointed time. Part 5. What loneliness is doing in you right now. I want to speak very directly about something that I know many of you are carrying because the silence around it has become its own kind of weight. Loneliness. Not the occasional loneliness of a quiet evening. The deep, structural, where is the person who was supposed to be here loneliness, the kind that sits with you at the dinner table and on the other side of a double bed that has been single for longer than you planned, the kind that makes celebrations harder, not easier, because the absence of a specific person is loudest when everyone else is surrounded. I'm not going to minimize that. It is real. C.S. Lewis knew it was real. He wrote about it with a rawness in A Grief Observed that still makes readers weep decades later. In the early pages of that book, written after Joy's death, he described grief as a door slammed in your face. He described reaching for the person and finding only space. He knew what it cost to love and to lose. But here is what the enemy has done with your loneliness that I need to expose. The enemy has taken something that is evidence of your capacity for love. The ache you feel is proof that love was made to live in you, and reinterpreted it as evidence of your unworthiness for love. He has taken the hunger and told you it is a verdict. Psalm 68 verse 6. God sets the lonely in families. The God who sees your loneliness does not leave it unaddressed. He sets the lonely in families. He places the isolated in community. He moves on behalf of the one who is alone in a way that requires his specific intervention, because only he can see clearly enough to know who belongs where. Isaiah chapter 54 verse 5. For your Maker is your husband. The Lord Almighty is his name. The Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. He is called the God of all the earth. This verse was written to a people who felt abandoned, who felt as if God had divorced them, had turned away, had left them alone in the world, and God's answer was not an explanation of where he had been. His answer was an identity statement. I am your husband. Your maker is your husband. What does that mean for you today? It means that the love you are hungry for is not absent from your life. It is present in its primary, deepest form in the God who made you. And from that foundation, from the security of that primary love, he is able to release the human love he designed for your appointed time. You are not waiting for love to begin. You are waiting for its next appointed expression. Lewis wrote something in A Grief Observed that stopped me completely the first time I read it. He said, "The most precious gift that marriage gave me was this constant impact of something very close and intimate, yet all the time unmistakably other, real, and in its own right incomprehensible. Something other, something real, something incomprehensible in its own right." That is what human love does. It gives you another person whose reality is entirely their own, who you cannot fully contain or fully understand, and who loves you anyway. And Lewis discovered this at 58. The gift he described, this constant, close, intimate, other, arrived when the world said it should not have been possible. The loneliness you carry is not a life sentence. It is a preparation. It is the ache of a capacity that has not yet been filled to its appointed measure. And the God who placed that capacity in you, the God who is himself, the source of the love you hunger for, has not forgotten what he placed there. Part 6. Someone younger who will love you forever. I want to explain the title of this message because it may have surprised you, and I want you to understand what it is actually saying. Someone younger who will love you forever. The first reading of that phrase might suggest a younger human partner, and I do not want to exclude that. God is fully capable of sending a younger person into your life to love you. The story of Ruth and Boaz is a story where the ages were different and the love was real and the appointment was divine. Lewis and Joy had a 13-year age difference. Age is not the point. Appointment is the point. But the deeper truth of the title is this: God himself is younger than your oldest wound. He is younger than the year the dream died. He is younger than the morning you decided it was too late. He's younger than the accumulation of evidence the enemy has been building in your mind for years. He's the God of Lamentations chapter 3, verse 23. His mercies are new every morning, new, fresh. Not exhausted by your past, not diminished by your years, not worn down by the waiting. Every morning, including this one, his love arrives completely new. Someone who will love you forever, that is the God who made you, who loved you before you existed, who loves you in this specific moment with a love that has no end and no expiration and no age limit. And from that love, from that inexhaustible, always new, forever committed love, he releases the human love that belongs to your story. Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 3. God speaks to his people who have been through devastation, through loss, through seasons so long and hard that they had begun to wonder if love still applied to them. And he says, I have loved you with an everlasting love. I have drawn you with unfailing kindness. Everlasting. Not, I loved you when you were young enough for it to be appropriate. Everlasting. The Hebrew olam, eternal, without beginning or end, stretching beyond the limits of time in both directions. He has loved you with an everlasting love. Not past tense. Not, I loved you before things got complicated. Present and eternal and without boundary. He draws you right now in this season with unfailing kindness. The kindness does not fail when the years accumulate. It does not withdraw when the circumstances are not what you planned. It draws continually, persistently, with the patience of a God who is not watching a clock. And then, Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 17. One of the most tender verses in all of the Old Testament. The Lord your God is with you, the mighty warrior who saves us. He will take great delight in you. In his love he will no longer rebuke you, but will rejoice over you with singing. God rejoices over you with singing. This is not the language of a God who has grown tired of you. This is not the language of a God who is watching your age with a clipboard and a deadline. This is the language of a God who is delighted by you, who sings over you in this very season, in this very place, with a full force of divine joy directed specifically at you. Lewis wrote in The Four Loves about what he called the appreciative love, the love that does not merely need its object, but values and honors and takes delight in it. He said, this was the form of love closest to the divine love, the love that sees and treasures and rejoices. God's love for you is appreciative love at its infinite source. He does not tolerate you. He treasures you. He does not endure your presence. He sings over it. And the human love he has designed for your appointed time, whether in the form of a partnership, a deep friendship, a family founding community, or the surprising arrival of a person you did not expect, flows from that same source of delight. You were not made for loneliness as a permanent address. You were made for love, the divine love that is already yours, and the human love that is still in motion toward you. And neither of them has checked your age and decided you are past their range. Part 7. How to position yourself for what is coming. I want to be practical for a few minutes because everything we have talked about is true, and truth requires application to become transformation. 3 postures, 3 specific postures that position you to receive what God is still building toward you. Posture 1. Release the timeline. The specific form of the timeline does not matter whether it was by 30, by 40, by the time your children were grown, by the age your parents were when they had what you are still waiting for. Release it, not because the desire is wrong, the desire is right and real and placed in you by God, but because the timeline you are holding was never the one God was working from. Psalm 37 verse 4. Take delight in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. The desire of your heart, the real desire, the one under all the specific requests, is to be loved fully and known completely and chosen freely. That desire is from God. The timeline you attached to it was from culture. Release the timeline and keep the desire, because the desire is the prayer and God is still answering it. Posture 2. Remain in expectation. There is a form of self-protection that looks like peace, but is actually resignation. It says, I have made peace with the fact that this will not happen. I have stopped hoping, so I will not be hurt again. I understand that posture. I have pastoral compassion for it. But I need to tell you the truth about what it does. It closes the hand that was meant to receive. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see. Faith requires an object. Faith requires the willingness to continue hoping for something that has not yet arrived. The expectation is not wishful thinking, it is the active posture of a person who has taken God at His word and is living accordingly. Remaining in expectation does not mean ignoring your present life while staring at the future. It means living fully in today while holding lightly the certainty that God is still writing. It means setting a table for one without concluding that the table will always be set for one. It means being fully present to what is, while remaining fully open to what is coming. There is a practical question I want to ask you, and I want you to answer it honestly, in the privacy of your own heart. When was the last time you genuinely prayed for the love you are waiting for, not as a resignation prayer, not as a, if it's your will prayer that secretly does not believe it is His will, but as an active, expectant, specific petition to a God who hears and responds and has not changed His mind about what He designed for your life? Because here is the truth. The prayer of genuine expectation is one of the most vulnerable things a human being can do. It requires the willingness to want something you do not yet have, and to believe that the wanting is not foolishness. But it is also one of the most powerful things you can do, because it is the exact posture that positions you to receive what God has been preparing. He responds to expectant faith. He honors the prayer that genuinely believes He is good enough and sovereign enough to answer. Posture 3. Receive love in its current form. The love of God for you is not on hold until the human love arrives. It is present right now in the Word, in the presence of the Spirit, in the community of believers, in the friend who calls to check on you, in the beauty of a morning that no one else noticed but you. Receive it. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight. In all your ways, including the ways that feel like waiting, the ways that feel like nothing is happening, the ways that feel like the path is unclear. Submit to Him, and He will make your path straight. Lewis wrote in Mere Christianity about what he called the surrendered will, the self that has stopped insisting on its own plan and has become available for God's. He said, "It was the most terrifying thing a person could do, and the most liberating, because the surrendered self discovers that the plan God had was better than the plan the self had given up. Surrender the timeline, stay in expectation, receive the love that is already here." That is the posture of a person who is ready for what God is still sending. Here is what I need you to understand before we close. The story is not over. I need you to hear that, not as a cliche, not as a comforting platitude designed to make you feel better for the next 20 minutes. I need you to hear it as a statement about the character of the God who wrote it. The God who gave Sarah a son at 90. The God who gave Ruth a kinsman redeemer in a foreign field. The God who gave Elizabeth a child in her old age and made that child the forerunner of the Messiah. The God who gave C.S. Lewis at 58, in the decade most people have spent in quiet resignation, the love that opened doors in him he did not know were there. That God has not looked at your life and concluded that the chapter for love and belonging and being chosen is finished. He has not placed a period where He intended a comma. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11. One more time. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Everything in its time. Your time has not passed. Your time is the time God knows, the appointed time, the the kairos moment that He has been preparing and you have been being prepared for. Late is a human word. God does not use it. What if the person God is sending is younger than your pain? Younger than the year the dream died? Younger than the morning you decided it was over? Younger than the accumulation of evidence the enemy assembled against the possibility of your being loved? What if the greatest love of your life is not behind you in the rearview mirror of your history, but ahead of you, walking toward you right now, in the appointed time that God has already fixed and you cannot yet see? Lewis did not know Joy Davidman was coming. He was not expecting her. He was not optimizing for her arrival. He was being faithful, writing, teaching, praying, living in the season he was in, and she arrived. And the love that arrived with her remade the final chapter of his life into the most human, most tender, most complete chapter he had ever lived. You are not too old. You are exactly the age for what God has designed for this season. And what He has designed is not a consolation prize. It is the appointed gift, the one that required exactly the person that time and grace and faithfulness have built you into being. Before we close, I want to pray with you. And I want to do it specifically, not in generalities, but in the specific language of what you have been carrying. Father God, I come to you on behalf of the one who has carried the weight of too late for longer than they should have had to carry it. The one who has celebrated other people's love with genuine joy while privately grieving the absence of their own. The one who has prayed this prayer before many times, in many seasons, and who is still here, still asking, still willing to believe that you have not forgotten them. Father, let them hear this right now, not as a message from a speaker, as a word from you. I have not forgotten the desire I placed in you. I have not revised the plan I made for you. The timeline I am working from is not the one that caused you to conclude it was too late. My timeline says, appointed time. My timeline says, I have loved you with an everlasting love. My timeline says, He has made everything beautiful in its time, and your time has not passed. I release the timeline that was never yours, Lord. I release the conclusions I drew from seasons that were preparation, not verdict. I receive your love in this moment, the love that is already here, already complete, already rejoicing over me with singing, and I hold with open hands the love that is still in motion toward me. In the name of Jesus, who at the wedding at Cana turned water into wine, when the host thought the celebration was over, I trust you. Amen. Here is what I want you to carry from today. You are not too old, not for love, not for being known, not for being chosen, not for the beautiful surprise that arrives in the season when you had finally stopped expecting it and finds you anyway, because God had already sent it. The love of God for you is not aging. It is not diminishing. It is not running out of patience or running low on resources or checking your demographic profile against its eligibility criteria. It is everlasting. It is new every morning. It rejoices over you with singing right now, in this moment, in this season, exactly as you are. And from that love, that infinite, always new, forever faithful love, He is still moving on behalf of the desire He placed in you, still preparing, still appointing, still writing the chapter you cannot yet see. Someone is coming who will love you in a way that has no age limit, because God sent them on His timeline, for His appointed purpose. The story is not over. The greatest chapter may not be behind you. You are a chosen one, and God never wastes the love He designed. You're not too old. You never were.